Today we're talking about presentation English. Whether you're a student or a working professional, if you've struggled with presenting in English, this video is for you. So just to make things a little easier and more clear, I'm breaking this down on a mind map here. As we all know, a presentation is made of three main parts: an opening, followed by the main body of a presentation, and of course, an ending. What I will do is I will go over them one by one, section by section, and I will be sharing with you some very useful English phrases and sentences to use for each part of the presentation. Are you ready? Let's go. An opening usually starts with greeting your audience by simply saying, "Hi, hello everyone," or "Good morning, good afternoon, everyone." If you're talking to a mix of audience where some are actually your professors or your classmates, or you actually work with some of them, you can add, "It's lovely to see some familiar faces here today." Now, the next sentence is useful when some people who are normally not the primary audience of your talk are running late, and you have to start your presentation on time. You can say, "I think we might still be missing a few people, but I'm going to kick things off now, so we have time to get through everything." And the last one here comes in handy when you are doing an online presentation. It's always a nice thing to clear out the technical problems before you start presenting by asking, "Can everyone hear me well? Are you able to see my screen?" It never hurt to double check, you know? You don't want to be presenting while other people are having connection issues and they can't hear you, and you have to start all over again. It's just not professional, and you end up wasting everybody's time. So let's not do that, okay? After you said hi to everyone, you go on to introduce yourself. A simple way is to say, "To introduce myself, my name is Renee," taking myself as example, "and I'm part of the marketing team here at XYZ company." Again, if you're in that situation where you know some of the audience and some you don't, you can add, "For those of you who don't know me, my name is," and you go on and finish introducing yourself. There are times when you are given a presentation when you just joined a new company, or you are presenting to someone external for the first time and you want to establish a sense of credibility by giving them more details of your background. You can say, "First of all, a little bit about my background. I am the director of marketing here at ABC company, and I've been with the company for 5 years. Before that, I used to work for XYZ company, where I worked as..." Next is to talk about what the presentation is about, the topic, and what the listeners will gain from listening to you. The goal. Here I have some examples. Today, or this morning, afternoon, we are going to talk about, or we are going to take a look at, the recent progress in so-and-so project. What I plan to do, or my goal is. This next sentence here is just an alternative, but I really like using this one when I'm doing a presentation for trainings. The reason I'm here today is to talk about this subject, and by the end of it, I hope you will know or you will be familiar with this subject. And we have a third one. I like how it's giving the audience an expectation of how long your presentation is going to last. For the next 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through some of the best practices in our text solution. By the end of it, right after sharing your topic, you have to give the audience an overview of how your presentation is going to flow. Here I have an example of a typical sales team presentation that I used to do a lot in my previous job. I'm breaking my presentation down into 3 sections. To start off, I will talk about how we're pacing against our Q1 targets. Then I will share some highlights and lowlights of the past month. And finally, I want us to focus on our action plans for the remaining time of Q1 and towards Q2. You can also use numbers to list out your agenda items. For example, number 1, number 2, number 3. Or you can say first, second, third. They are very simple but effective at the same time. The last part for the opening section is to set your rules for the Q&A session. If you don't feel like being interrupted during your presentation, you can say, I would appreciate it if you can hold your questions until the end of the presentation. An alternative is to say, we'll have 10 minutes for an open discussion at the end. If this doesn't feel like you and you want to welcome questions while you're presenting, you can say, feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions during the presentation. Or if there is anything unclear, feel free to interrupt, and I will do my best to answer your question. Apart from interrupt, you can also say, feel free to put your hand up, you're free to unmute and speak up if you're presenting online. Before moving on, I just want to add that I don't think every presenter sets a rule for Q&A at the beginning of their presentation. Some of them do it later, some of them don't do it at all. So this is optional, okay? So just take whatever works for you and leave the rest. Moving on to the body of a presentation, during which we need to initiate a topic, conclude on a topic, and transition to the next one. When we present, we usually use visual aids such as PowerPoint slides. So we also need to say things to draw the audience attention to our visuals from time to time. Now let's look at some useful phrases. To start off talking about something, you can say, first, I want us to take a look at, or let's start by taking a look at. Now, let's move on to the first part of the presentation. Another good and fun way to let your audience know that you're about to start off on a new topic is by asking them a question. For instance, instead of jumping right into talking about the definition of MarTech, you can start by asking questions like, so, what is MarTech? Show me your hands if you've heard about MarTech before. Moving on to conclude and continue. If you want to go on about your topic and explain it a bit further, you can use, let me elaborate further on this point. If your next point is connected, you can introduce it by saying, this leads me to my next point. A few other alternatives are, now this covers everything about point A. Let's move on to point B. Moving on to, or part 2, when it comes to referring to your visuals or your PowerPoint slides, here are some useful sentences. As you can see on this chart, we are looking at a 70% completion ratio for our April targets. If I could draw your attention to this chart, this graph, or this table, this chart or graph or table illustrates, this chart shows, this chart tells us that. Here I've got a bonus point for you. A lot of times when I listen to a presentation, I get confused at where my eyes should be looking at because there's always a lot of information on just one slide, which is not always a good thing, but a lot of people do it these days. So I always appreciate it when a presenter is sensitive enough to notice it and kind enough to give clear direction. So if you agree with me, I suggest that you use direction words like left, right, top, bottom, in the middle, top left, top right, bottom right, so that your audience will never be lost. Finally, we are at the ending of our presentation. Usually when you wrap up a talk, a nice thing to do is to recap what you talked about so that your main points are re-emphasized. Here I have quite a few suggestions, so just take whatever works for you. To sum up what has been said, let me remind you of the main points we covered today. Well, that concludes my presentation today. To refresh your memory, the main takeaways are the following. Number 1. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you now have a better understanding of, now that you've done your wrap-up, you are ready to take some heat from the audience and answer some questions. You can let them know by saying, thank you for listening, thank you for your attention, or thank you for your time. Now I will open the floor to questions. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now. Alright, so that brings me to the end of my video today. I hope by now you have a better understanding of what English phrases and sentences to use in your presentations. I want to give a shout out to this viewer who reached out to me through DM and requested this video from me. Thank you for the inspiration, and I really hope this video helps you. So if you're like her, and if you have any questions for me, English related or not, please feel free to let me know through comment or through DM. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!